Welcome to the Peak Performance Podcast, your guide to optimizing your life one health tip at a time. This podcast is designed to entertain and inform, not to provide medical or health advice. Always consult your doctor when it comes to your personal health or before you make any changes to your diet, exercise, or lifestyle.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Peak Performance Podcast. I am Coach Kyle, leader of the Anti-Mercury Squad. Let's go! And I'm here with Dr. K, Kosubevsky himself. Dr. K, what are we talking about today?
Well, this is actually the first episode we're recording, and what I thought would be my first episode recorded in the new space, but because of Hurricane Milton, I'm still recording in the old space one last time, because this is the first episode we're recording since launching the Longevity Center.
The Longevity Center, it's been great. We've seen a lot of patients so far, had a great grand opening, and we've got a great response. But in response to some of the questions we've gotten during our first week open, we actually came up with this episode for you guys. So what are we talking about?
Well, really what we're talking about is to Herx or not to Herx. And what is a Herx? And by Herx, I mean Herxheimer reactions or detox or die-off reactions or whatever other words you want to use for them. And I don't mean detox like detoxing from alcohol. I mean detox like eliminating toxins from your body.
Yeah, so biotoxins as well as inorganic toxins such as heavy metals.
Yep, exactly.
So why don't we start by going into like what is a Herxheimer reaction and what is not, and why do we kind of like lump it all into one category, even though it's not necessarily that?
Yeah, absolutely. So a true Herxheimer, it's basically a true Herxheimer reaction and everything else. So a true Herxheimer reaction is the type of die-off reaction typically seen with Lyme disease or certain other chronic infections, where the treatment creates such a big killing effect of the pathogen that your body can't eliminate it quick enough, and it tends to, basically its dead product tends to build up. And so a true Herxheimer is a very specific set of symptoms, basically flu-like symptoms. So you have the body aches, the fever, the chills. Typically, it can kick in anywhere within 36 hours of your last treatment and can last from 24 to 48 hours once it kicks in.
So that's a Herxheimer. And like you said, it's only very specific cases where we're actually like killing some kind of pathogen, bacteria, something like that. And then it causes this die-off reaction. But I've heard, like, in the natural medicine space, in the podcast space, in the health coaching space, a lot of people say Herxheimer for things that are not Herxheimer reactions. So what are those?
So that's basically die-off effects or anything else that isn't a true Herxheimer. So that's when we're treating things like heavy metals, molds, parasites. The lines start to get gray with stuff like that. And basically, it's all kind of the same thing as Herxheimer's definition for those specific symptoms.
Gotcha. Okay. So, specifically, accurately, we can say Herxheimer is for die-off of specific pathogens, but, we have a Herxheimer-like effect for general detox reactions. And general detox reactions could be organic or inorganic toxins, such as heavy metals or mold, things like that.
And so what I would say about that stuff is it's typically an exacerbation of your symptoms. So let's say we're detoxing you from mold and it's really affecting your brain. You're going to get a lot of brain symptoms, brain fog, fatigue, stuff like that. Whereas, if we're detoxing from lead and a lot of lead's in your bones, you may experience bone or muscle pain. So it's typically linked to where you feel it.
So whatever low-grade symptoms you're dealing with, like on a constant basis, a chronic basis, you pull it out. When you detox from that specific thing, you're going to have those exacerbated for a short period of time. That's the detox reaction.
Yeah, because you're feeling it come out of whatever that location is.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. So it's kind of affecting you on its way out type deal.
Yep, exactly.
So in a way, this is actually a good thing, right? Even though you're feeling a little worse for a little period of time.
Yeah, it's like one of those things. Feeling the symptoms, yes, of course it sucks, and I feel bad for people that have to experience detox symptoms to get through their treatments, but it's not a bad thing to experience. The only truly dangerous one is anaphylaxis, and that's a very, 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 and I cannot emphasize very enough, small subset of people. Like 0.00001% of the population can actually be allergic to. And mostly you see it with DMPS or mercury chelation. That's the only time I've ever seen it in 2 of my patients.
And specifically, it's super high burdens, right? People who have super crazy amounts of mercury.
Other than that, it's that they have mast cell activation. And that plus doing DMPS, they can't keep up with the sulfate breakdown. So there actually is ways to get around that, and both those people have gotten through treatment. Besides that anaphylaxis, no other Herxheimer symptoms or detox symptoms are truly dangerous. They suck to go through. They're really not fun. You're going to feel miserable for a couple of days, but it cannot long-term hurt you or kill you.
Yeah. And so I've experienced a lot of this throughout my detoxing journey. I was kind of on this like perpetual like detox reactions cycle before I knew I had mercury, because I would detox from mold and then I would get mold again. I would detox from mold, and every time I would do it, I would feel like trash, and I would feel a little better after detox, but then I would get worse. And then I found the heavy metals, and my detox reaction was pretty bad when we started detox, but as we continued, it got better and better and better until I virtually have no reaction now except for, I could use a coffee. Like,
Exactly. How were you the first time you chelated?
oh, that was not great. I was like drunk. I was literally like balance issues, brain fog, fatigue. I was like, what is going on?
And so what's that tell us? Where was all your mercury?
In the brain.
In the brain. In the brain and on your nerves.
Yep. And so I think this leads us into a very important point. The type of reaction people get to detoxing can give us information as to where and what toxins they might have.
Yep, exactly.
So this is different from like scientific toxin testing, which we have, I think, covered extensively. And I think you should do this so you know what toxins you're treating. But another data point you can add alongside, like actual heavy metal provocation tests or mycotoxin tests is actually the symptoms you have to that detox. So if you apply the mercury detox, and even if you're showing a medium to low number on mercury, but you have big detox symptoms, it's probably something we still want to detox from, correct?
Yep, exactly. So it's one of those things, and this is the other thing, and this is something I've started doing at the new place, is a lot of essential element testing. Because what I've noticed is some people, their initial provocation test comes up low. Their mercury's like a 3. Like, it's showing up, so you have some, but why isn't it higher? And usually what's going on, the chelation combines other things, copper, manganese, cobalt, all sorts of like random trace elements. And if you're too high in those, it'll actually throw off your results. So if you're reacting, but your mercury is low or your lead is low, there's still a reason you're reacting. It's still binding to some kind of toxin. And so you just need more research.
Yeah. So basically, kind of the best way to go about detox is to use both scientific tracking data in terms of specifically how much you have on provocation test or mold test, along with your reaction to the detox. And that'll guide the best course of treatment.
Exactly.
And you're done when both of them are 0? Is that how that works?
Basically, yeah.
Yeah. So if like I get a provocation test, for example, and I show up at a 1 or whatever, something super low, and I didn't have any symptoms from that DMPS, chances are DMPS has done what it can do for me.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. And so, in the case of mercury, in my case specifically, I'm still in the brain detox phase. So DMPS hardly affects me at all because it mostly pulls from the body. But ALA, the brain detox chemical, it still wrecks me. I mean, I'm foggy headed, low energy. I can't find my words. I'm like, blah, blah, blah. It's obviously, I still have some mercury in my brain because I'm still having those detox effects, even though I can't really quantifiably measure it anymore. Because ALA is at its root, it's a chelating agent, but it's also an antioxidant. It should make me feel slightly better.
Okay. So we talked about what they are and why we can experience them. Is there any way to stop them?
Yeah, but I mean, in my experience, it's so specific to the person and the symptom, right?
Yeah. Basically, it's like, can you shovel or can you scoop the bucket out of the boat faster than the water's coming in? And sometimes yes, sometimes no. And so there are things that you can do to help mitigate those symptoms. And I'm going to list them and then we'll go through them. Castor oil packs, diuretics, coffee enemas, colon hydrotherapy.
There's a lot more. Vibe plate, EBU itself, the therapy we offer, is a really good one. Dry brushing, anything that does lymphatic drainage in general.
lymphatic massage, Epsom salt baths.
The Balancer Pro is a piece of tech that Upgrade Labs has, and it's like FDA approved for lymphatic massage. If you can sit in one of those things for an hour, that would be huge. I've had people literally be able to get 2 belt loops on their belt extra because they got rid of that much inflammatory fluid from one of those.
Wow.
But how do we apply these? So, like, let's take a couple of case scenarios so people kind of understand. I know mercury is a very common one for people, so we can talk about that, maybe lead and mold.
Absolutely. So you kind of do it case by case. So I have some patients that when they chelate, they're like, listen, I don't pee for hours until I drink like a gallon of water, and only then do I start to pee. I'm like, so you're overloading your kidney processing, and those people I'll put on dandelion root. It's diuretic. It forces them to start peeing sooner and to start dumping before the toxin load builds up too high in their GU tract.
Okay. So that's very specific to the people who are just not peeing out the toxins.
Yep.
Okay.
Then there's the people that just get super swollen. And so that tells us they're moving all of the toxins into their lymph system. And so that's where we do things like Viplate. And actually, so there is, we have one in the office now, and this is just a little self-promotion. We'll put a link in. The best Viplate we found is equivalent, it's like $400 we have 10% off, use our coupon code. It's equivalent to like these $3,000 or $4,000 Viplates because it has the 3 planes of motion. But so you can use Viplate, you can do lymphatic massage, lymphatic drainage, dry brushing. That's anything for lymph backup.
Yeah. So if you do a treatment, a detox treatment, and you start to swell up, you really want to hammer the lymph. So all those things he said. You could also add rebounding, 10,000 plus steps a day to move that fluid. Those are all very good options for lymphatic drainage and lymph blockage. So say I'm chelating lead and my bones and muscles hurt. What do we do for that?
That's the toughest ones. Unfortunately, those people, I have them take extra minerals because what it tells me is their actual bones are turning over. So they just need extra calcium and other minerals. But that's pretty much the best one. Those are the toughest ones.
Yeah. So you can take minerals. And another thing to help with this I've found is magnesium. So you can do either oral or topical. If you do topical, get like an oil and then put DMSO on top of it. After you put the magnesium on, it drives it into the area that you're having pain, and that can usually alleviate some of that muscle pain.
The other big thing I want to touch on is colon hydrotherapy or colonics. I've gotten a lot of questions like, why do you have colonics in your office? Well, it doesn't really fit with everything else we do, but it does. Because toxins, we have 2 primary toxin excretion pathways, urine and stool. And so urine, if we put you on diuretic, you'll be good. You don't want to be taking laxatives all the time to excrete through the stool because it messes up your GI motility. But doing colonics, they'll actually excrete a ton more toxins by doing colonics, and it actually can improve your GI motility.
So this is, now that I think about it, I've seen the research on ALA, alpha lipoic acid, and detoxing mercury from the brain. When you detox mercury from the brain, most of it ends up going through the liver pathway and in the stool. So someone who's in a brain detox phase of mercury could probably do colonics and have a great benefit in terms of dropping the symptoms and the levels of mercury in the brain.
So my whole thing is I think people should do a colonics at least, if they were doing after every chelation, that'd be even better, but at least every 3rd chelation just to make sure that we're dumping toxins all the time.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What about mast cell? So, I know a lot of times mercury and other heavy metals may activate mast cells, something like a mast cell activation syndrome, which is like a giant histamine response on the body. So what do you do to attack that?
So typically mast cell, they're too high in mercury, so they don't have any molybdenum, and so they can't break down histamines properly. So what we do, once I find someone with mast cell, and sometimes they come to me and you can identify them because they're the ones that break out in hives every time they eat the wrong thing or touch the wrong thing or smell the wrong thing. So typically what I do is we start with EDTA chelation, doesn't trigger mast cell activation, and we do a lot of ozone. So we need to fully finish EDTA chelation and do usually between 10 and 15 ozone treatments. And then we start by, I'll actually have these people, we do, forget the word for it, but basically you build up their tolerance to DMPS. So they'll start by dripping it on their skin. Once they stop reacting, they'll put the drop in their mouth and they'll keep doing that until they can get to a full syringe in their mouth. And then after that, we start doing IV.
Oh, very nice. And then on the supplement side, I have a pretty good protocol that basically I don't love using it all the time, but if we're to the point where we know we need to get that toxin out and we just want to band-aid the symptoms from the histamine response, this is a protocol I use. So it's basically a uriclaritin and Pepsid. So claritin's an H1 blocker, Pepsid is an H2 blocker. You take it AM and PM, and then you do quercetin AM and PM, and then you take along with that, and this is important, very important, you take digestive enzymes and betaine HCl, because Pepsid will block the stomach acid. And if you don't have stomach acid, you're not going to digest your food appropriately. So this protocol, usually, if you're using it to reset your mast cells, you need to be on it for about 6 months while you get rid of all the toxins and then go off it, and you should be stabilized. But not everybody really likes to use it that way. Instead, using it as a Band-Aid is probably a better approach, just to get through chelation.
Yep. And if you want a recommendation for supplements, you can call or email us. We'll build you a full scripts profile. We just have a template for it that we just apply to you, and you just hit order on one cart. That way you don't have to think too hard about which digestive enzyme, which betaine, et cetera.
Yeah, and that makes it very easy. Also, in general, if you want to talk to the doctor or set up a consultation or talk to myself and think about health coaching, feel free to call us.
Yep.
Detox reactions. Is there anything that we haven't covered that we really should?
The castor oil packs.
Yeah, castor oil packs, coffee enemas.
Mm-hmm.
How does castor oil packs, how do they work?
I feel like you're asking me, but you could probably answer it better.
So I'm not super up on the science of this. I know the general premise. Basically, you put castor oil over the liver, it soaks through the skin and has a movement effect on the liver that helps flush bile. So something like that and coffee enemas work in a very similar manner in terms of what we're doing is we're flushing the liver. We're flushing the bile out. We're trying to cleanse it. So, a good thing to stack with something like this is maybe, like if you want to do kind of a liver cleanse to support your detox on like your off weeks. So say you're going in for chelation or you're going in for ozone or whatever next week at the office and you're on your off week, you could do like a castor oil pack Monday, coffee enema Tuesday. And with those, if you stack some bitters, some like cocktail bitters that help move bile, and some charcoal, activated charcoal. So you do bitters, wait 10 minutes, take some activated charcoal, wait probably 30 minutes, and then do your castor oil pack or your coffee enema. This is going to be a massive signal to move bile, flush the liver, along with that charcoal grabbing onto other things, sticky parts of the bile that wouldn't have gotten flushed, and driving it all out.
That makes a lot of sense.
Very, very comprehensive flushing protocol. A lot of people will see massive benefits in detox reactions just running a protocol like that for a few weeks before they go detox. And then they can kind of just get ahead of it because their liver's not overburdened to begin with.
Fair.
Fortunately, I know a lot about liver through detoxification, but the kidney is all Dr. K's zone because I don't know too much about the kidney and detoxification.
Well, like I said, kidneys, as long as they have enough water coming in, they pretty much take care of themselves. And that's where I just add the dandelion root as a diuretic. That seems to take care of most of those issues.
Yeah. The other thing that comes to mind is peptide bioregulators. So if you're having specific symptoms and you know they're related to a specific organ system in the body, there's things called peptide bioregulators. They're like tiny little chains of amino acids, 1 to 4, and they basically directly signal that organ system to return to optimal function. So they make them for kidneys, they make them for livers. So if you have low kidney function or high liver enzymes, you could take some of these and it might boost the function of those organ systems and prepare you for better detox.
Perfect. Very cool.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned it too, but in general, water. You have to have enough water for both the liver and the kidneys and the lymph for that matter. If you are not moving water through the system, and appropriate water, not just drinking gallons of RO water because you're not going to get the electrolytes, you're not going to absorb any. If you're not moving a lot of water through the system, there's nothing to flush. That is the flushing mechanism. That's what helps move everything through.
Yeah. I mean, I think we have a whole episode dedicated to water. It's part of the carnivore episodes, like water, hydration, and carnivore.
Yeah. So that's another very, very important key. Like if you're doing any detox, you need to go into it hydrated.
Yep.
So I think we've pretty much covered it. What about people who just don't want to deal with a detox reaction? And so they don't want to detox?
That's one of those things. If you're seeking this stuff out, chances are you're already not feeling good. So you have to approach it, okay, I'm going to feel worse for a temporary bit, but then long term, I'm going to feel better the rest of my life. And that's just how it's going to go. If you're a detox, if you react, there's not much we can do. We can help it fully make it go away.
Yeah. And that's the same thing of like pretty much anything worth doing in life. You want to exercise? Well, it's going to suck. It's going to be hard. You got to move the weights. You want to do a half marathon, you got to train it. It's not going to be fun. you got to grind through it. You want to advance your career. Well, you got to put in extra hours in the beginning. So it's going to get worse before it gets better. But eventually, with all these things, you're going to get to a point where you're strong, you're fit, you're where you want to be in your career, you're detoxed. So it gets worse before it gets better.
Exactly.
So, and it's kind of the unfortunate case, but I think education is a big part of this. So like if people know it's going to get worse before it gets better, they're more prepared for it, and then they can understand it and just deal with it. But if you didn't educate them prior to detox and they were just like, I'm getting worse, this isn't working, then it just shoots themselves in the foot because they're not going to continue detox. Okay. Well, that's Detox Reactions. If you guys have any questions whatsoever, send them to us. You can send them to our email on the Peak Performance Podcast. You can send them to our Peak Performance Instagram. You can send them to our Instagram on the LCFL. That's the Longevity Center FL. You can send them basically anywhere. We'll get the questions. And we will answer them on podcasts for you. So it's like, ask a doctor anything, and he'll answer it on the podcast. Ask me anything, and I'll answer it on a podcast. Even if that answer is, we don't know, we'll still answer it. So, like, you want free consult? You want a free question answered from an expert in this field? Shoot us a question. We'll do our best to help you out. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is Detox Reactions. What they are, what effects they could have, how to mitigate them, is it worth it, and what to do if you just don't want them. So that's Detox Reactions. I'm Coach Kyle.
And I'm Dr. K. Thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Adios.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Peak Performance Podcast, your #1 resource for today's top health hacks and facts. You can follow us on Instagram at the Peak Performance Pod or on X at PerformPod. You can also check out our website and weekly blogs at peakperformancepodcast.online. Again, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. We put out a new podcast every Thursday. The content of this podcast is provided for informational purposes only and is not intended for the purposes of diagnosing, treating, curing, or preventing any disease. Before using any products referenced on the podcast, consult with your healthcare provider. Carefully read all labels and heed all directions and cautions that accompany the product. Information found or received through the podcast should not be used in place of a consultation or advice from a healthcare provider. If you suspect you have a medical problem or should you have any healthcare questions, please promptly call or see your healthcare provider. This podcast, including Coach Kyle, Dr. K, and producers, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of the information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain endorsements and advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein.